we're very, very happy to have, we have Benita Fitzgerald Mosley and Zella Brown. We're going to be discussing the Courageous Four, the story of four teachers, African-American teachers that were selected to work in white schools at the time of segregation. We have talked a little bit about this group of outstanding ladies in some of our Facebook posts and some of our writings, but we're really starting to delve into do some research and some interviews and looking at past interviews, and we're putting together a display that's going to be put up, one of something like this that we're going to have about these ladies. We're going to really get a lot of good information. I think you will be pleased with the final result. Benita is the daughter of Fannie Fitzgerald. She's one of the original teachers, and Benita is going to speak on her behalf today because unfortunately she's passed. Benita is an Olympic gold medalist and established high-profile international leader in the sports and business sectors with a passion for helping people and organization win gold medals in life and work. Benita currently serves as the head of the Community Impact and president of Fun Play for League Apps, a youth sports management technology platform. Ms. Brown is a retired educator from Prince William County Public Schools. Her entire teaching experience has been with Prince William County. Zella retired from teaching in 1991 with 30 years of teaching service. In the 1960s, Zella was one of the first four African-American teachers moved to four all-white elementary schools to integrate the all-white Prince William County facility. Zella is a proud graduate of Virginia Union University in Richmond, Virginia, with a BA in elementary education. So at this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Mosley and Ms. Brown to join me. What drove your mom and you to become a teacher? Was it someone was in your family before you was a teacher? Was it a career that was easy accessible at that time? What kind of drove you to become a teacher?
Well, when I graduated from high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I didn't go to college until 2 years later. Mm-hmm. And I had worked with children before, and I enjoyed it. And it just kind of stuck with me, and I said, well, this might be something I might enjoy and be able to help students to learn and to become productive citizens. Mm-hmm. So I decided to go to school to Virginia Union University and major in elementary education. Okay. So that is how I came around with that, because nobody in my family was a teacher. Mm-hmm. So somebody had to break through.
Right. Were you the first one in your family to go to college?
No.
No?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There were others. Yeah, I did have an older sister that taught school. She taught for a number of years in Fairfax County. But we were close, and I did learn from her. So all in all, after being out of high school 2 years, I decided to delve into education. Okay. And I'm glad I did, because I've had a rich experience. Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
It's just such a pleasure to be here. I call her Anzella because my mom and she were good friends, and I grew up with Natalie. It's really nice to see them both. Yeah, my mom has passed away. It's a great honor to be able to represent her today. And, from my knowledge about her, she followed in the footsteps of her older sister, Mabel Thornton, and who had gone on to Virginia Union University, majored in education. She was the youngest of 11, and the baby girl, Aunt Mabel was the second youngest, and my mom was 6 years behind her. So she kind of was a bit of an only child those last few years, and all of her older brothers and sisters took her under their wing. Their mother had passed away when she was about 11, and so they were very much her mentors and surrogate parents. And her older sister Susie had already moved to Richmond and lived there with her husband and 2 young children. And so my mom followed the family to Richmond, and Virginia Union seemed like the right place for her. She ended up getting her undergraduate degree, as Anzella did, at Virginia Union. And then, as was a very familiar, unfortunately, experience for African American people at that time, she wanted to pursue her master's degree in special education. And none of the graduate schools in Virginia would allow her to attend because she was Black. And so the state of Virginia paid for her to get her master's degree at Columbia University in New York City, full scholarship.
Wow.
We had an aunt that lived up there, my Aunt Martha, at the time. So she stayed with my Aunt Martha. She worked in the summers and as a maid, and also as an elevator operator. Got her master's degree from an Ivy League institution, courtesy of the state of Virginia, and came back and taught for 35 years in Prince William County.
That's awesome. That's wonderful.
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am. No.
Benita's mother, Fannie, and another one of the Courageous Four, Maxine Coleman, at one point in time, we taught at the same school. And we would reflect, after all the changes had come about the times we had and we enjoyed working with each other, and we enjoyed each other's company. So it was a great time.
Well, I'm sure they became like sisters to you through the shared experience. Especially. Now, that kind of leads me to this first question. You all worked together in the same school. How did they decide that you 4 would be the 4 that would break the barrier and go into these all-white schools? Was it an application process? Did they just come up and say, you're doing it, you're going to be reassigned? Or did you have any say in the matter? Or how did that whole thing come about?
It was not by application process. And it was not by being invited to discussions or meetings or whatever. The way I was notified was by the superintendent of Prince William County Schools at that time, Mr. Stuart Bevel. I was teaching out in the Haymarket area at Antioch McCray Elementary, an all-Black school. And one morning, I was going about my teaching day, and I was asked to come to the principal's office. And I said, uh-oh. So I went to the office, and Mr. Bevel was there. And we spoke, we exchanged pleasantries, and he told me that I had been selected to teach in an all-white school, to integrate an all-white faculty.
Wow.
And I said, what? So anyway, it took a while for that to sink in, but I said, you're kidding? He said, So I said, when does this transfer or change come about? And he said, tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
So I was teaching 4th grade at that time. And when I started teaching here in Manassas at Loch Lomond Elementary, I was assigned to 2nd grade. So one day I was in a all-Black school, and the next day I was in an all-white school.
Unbelievable.
Yes. And it was just sort of, I guess, a numbing experience.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yes. But I learned a lot. And of course I did. And things worked out well that first day of school.
That's shell shock, though, to be thrown in like that, just so unprepared.
I had no information concerning the integration process in Prince William County. I didn't know what was going to happen. I know other places, localities, were integrating schools, and some of the transitions were smooth, but there were others that was chaotic.
Well, yeah.
And so I said, boy, this is really something. But the school integration was foremost in the news. So people were being informed about it all over. And that's the extent. There was no interview, there was no application, there was no, discussion with me. I was just informed that I would be going.
Did you later find out about maybe why you were selected, or did you ever hear any rumors about we picked these four because they were leaders in their schools, or did you ever get any inkling at all about why you were selected?
I don't know. The only thing I can think of is that maybe somebody saw something they liked, or heard something that they liked. Mm-hmm. But as far as saying, you possess these qualities, or we would like for you to do this, no.
Wow.
So there had to be something going in the right direction in order for it to happen. I don't know what.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't privy to anything.
Yeah.
No.
My mom described a similar experience, and not getting any warning at all. And I guess I would like to paint the backdrop of 1965. The whole country was completely segregated, and you just lived your life with other people who looked like you, and you went to church with them, and you lived on the same street as them, and you taught with them, and you went to school with them. My dad taught at Jenny Dean. Roger Fitzgerald was his name, and that was a high school where all of the kids from Fauquier, Fairfax, Loudoun, Prince William, all were boarded during the week, and then they would leave on the weekends to go home. So my dad was dorm supervisor, if you will, and a math and science teacher.
Was that the one here in Manassas, the Jenny Dean? Okay.
Yeah. And my mom taught there for a little bit. I have her resume in front of me because I don't want to miss anything. And so when they were called, to duty, if you will, in that kind of way, it wasn't just like the way we live now, you just transferring schools or something.
Right.
I mean, this is complete and total culture shock.
Yeah.
For them, I'm sure, and for your colleagues and for the families. And one thing I learned from Herb Saunders' family later, around the time I think he passed, was that they hand-selected the kids in the class to be from military families.
Really?
And that was one institution where integration had already started.
That's
and so
I never knew
those individuals had already been in barracks potentially with people of color and had been, soldiering side by side.
Right. Had experience.
With them in the commissary and things like that. And so it wasn't as big a shock to the young people in the classroom. And so my mom said, and famously quoted as saying, children are children no matter what color they are. And I think for Anzella and all of the Courageous Four, you just went on about your business of teaching.
Yeah, that's true. Because I didn't know that your mom and Maxine had been visited by
The superintendent as well.
by Mr. Saunders, I think, was director of personnel.
And he was a white gentleman, right?
Yes.
Yeah, all of them white. So Mr. Saunders didn't inform me that I had been selected. It was Mr. Bevel. And remember seeing Mr. Bevel come to, it was a small black school, all black school out in the Haymarket area.
Would you like your water?
He would not come into the classroom to observe,
Here you go.
thank you, me or the class. There was a window in the door to the classroom, and I could look up any time, and he was standing outside the door looking through the glass. And I said, oh God, how long has he been there? But that was the extent of it.
It's interesting how little time they gave you all to prepare. Just you were expected, boom, boom, it was done. You had no say, no input. That's shocking. I mean, like you said, it's a different time.
Different time and different time. I mean, Brown versus Board of Education, the famous law that, federal law that caused the integration of schools had passed in the mid-50s.
Yeah, but enforcing it, yeah.
And Prince William County still hadn't integrated, Fairfax, Fauquier, Loudoun. And there was this thing called a massive resistance in several counties throughout Virginia that refused to hold classes because they were protesting desegregation. And so for 5 years in many of these counties around Virginia, there was no school, no public school.
Right.
So if your child was 5 years old, they were 10 or 11 years old before they ever stepped foot in school. And so I'm sure Mr. Bevel, Mr. Saunders, the powers that be in the county wanted to avoid a massive resistance.
Right,
They were trying to ease people into this notion.
Just doing it and not making a fuss about it, yeah. What did your families think about it? Like, you were talking, your dad was also an educator. What did he think about it?
I'm sure. I can't even imagine what kind of conversation happened.
Oh, I know. Between them, yeah.
Yeah, master bedroom door. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. You know, when my father was worked for the Navy, and when they talked about moving positions, he and my mom, like you said, would have those family-altering decisions to make. And I'm sure you did with your husband and your kids.
My family was excited, and they supported me, of course. And that was a big help, in helping me to be initiated into this environment.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
I'm sure there was some, nervousness, but there had to also be fear, I would think.
Yeah.
Like you said, with the climate, the way it was so charged, I can't imagine being put into that situation. I'm sure. Were you, I'm sure nervous, but were you also scared?
Yeah, in a sense I was, because I was going into this new school environment. I had no idea what to expect. And I said to myself, I just got to try to handle this as best I can. I don't know what might be coming or what I might meet or run into or whatever. But my first day in the new school, the principal was very receptive, and I was warmly received by the faculty members that I met and staff and some of the students. And we walked around the school to, get an idea of what was there. And so in meeting different people, there were smiles, hellos, welcome, this kind of thing. Although I was nervous, and I started to feel a little bit better because I didn't think I was going to be pound sport or whatever attack. And so that worked out pretty well. And as I went around on the school tour, I got to my Antioch McCray school, and it was so different. The physical plant itself was so very different. The spaces, the school, the supplies.
Right.
Yes, because in some of the cases we would get, at Antioch, we would get used materials from Prince William County, books and whatever, and we could tell that they had been used because the names had been erased or crossed out. So a lot of times we got the secondhand stuff, and we would buy materials to aid us in our teaching. So there were a lot of differences. The design of the school, and like I said, of course, the white school was much bigger, and the black school was a very small school.
It was. I live in Haymarket in Dominion Valley, and when I moved, we moved there in 2001 when it first opened initially, and then left. I moved back to Colorado and then came back in 2016. But Antioch McCray was still there when we first moved in 2001, and now the building is unfortunately gone. But I remember my mom, taking me down there and showing me the school, and I'm sure she'd shown it to me when I was little, but didn't remember. But it, stuck with me, and I remember going back there at some point in time because they built a Walmart now at Home Depot opposite where it is, and I think some kind of data center back there in place of the school. But I went back there one time and saw that it was gone. It just kind of broke my heart.
Yes, it was. Asbestos was found in the school, so it was pushed down, destroyed. But at the time the school was there, we weren't aware of that. And that was bad news, having asbestos there. So, according to what I've heard, that was a reason for the demolition.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, they were so separate, the white and African American communities. So you didn't know anybody going into that school.
Heck no.
Yeah. What was the response from the parents and the students of the students first of all, and then later the parents of those students when you were assigned to that school?
My memory serves me. The students didn't seem to back away from me or be distant or anything. And we had a good relationship. And also with the parents, communicating with the parents through phone calls and conferences and whatever. So for the most part, as I can remember, I didn't get any really negative, like name calling or criticizing or trying to back you into a corner or anything like that.
Did you have anybody withdraw their students from your classroom because they didn't want?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Because I think they were all, this was not a surprise to the students and the parents.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sure they were.
To them.
That was my understanding of
that they prepared the students.
Years ago, that they handpicked those students with the permission of their
Parents,
Yeah.
okay. Because you would think that the parents would have been notified ahead of time, unlike
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that they would have told that they were going to make the change. Because, and it was not in the beginning of a school year, wasn't it in the middle of the school?
School year had begun.
Yeah.
Yeah, school was in session.
So they pulled a teacher and placed you in that classroom. Wow, that's even a worse situation.
Yes. Sure did.
Well, you kind of already mentioned this, but I'm sure it was pretty immediate to you to notice the disparity between the two schools, the one you were coming from and the one you were going for, with the money for new supplies. And, we have our Lucasville School, which is a one-room African-American schoolhouse here that we preserved. And then we have the Brentsville Schoolhouse. Now, they're two different time periods, but it's a white school and an African-American school. And just the physical, like you said, the one school's smaller, one school's bigger, and the supplies. I'm sure that was very evident to your mom and to you when you first walked in. With you having experienced this, is this something that at first you were reluctant to discuss? Did your mom talk a lot about it when you all were growing up? And no, it was
really interesting. I found out about it much later in life. I was totally grown, and so no, I think, and Anzella could probably speak for herself, but I think during that time, you just roll with the punches. I mean, my parents were, very highly educated, very successful educators, and very much community servants, Lions Club, all kinds of boards and organizations that they served on in the church and otherwise. And so they were about a life of service and integrity, and they never had a chip on their shoulders. They didn't lash out. They didn't, say, woe is me, and,
this is part of their history.
It was just part of their lives. And honestly, I just recall when I was at the Olympic Games and won, and going around the victory lap and everything. My parents were just beaming and talking to them afterwards. I mean, the thought of their child, a child of parents who grew up during the Depression and, Jim Crow and all of that, to be on a world stage.
And so successful.
And be at University of Tennessee getting an engineering degree and, going on to do all the things like that. It was just, forget icing. I mean, that's just like a cake as tall as Empire State Building,
Yep,
right?
sure is.
And they were just so thankful and grateful and happy, to see how their lives had changed so much, and so much for the better, and that of their children and grandchildren.
Yeah, to provide.
So, gratitude and integrity and service. I mean, those are the things that they focused on, and not on what they didn't have or how people might have treated them. And so I think as a result, that's why Mr. Bevel and Mr. Saunders would select these 4 women. I think they all, growing up, knowing Anzella, they all had that same, grace and dignity. Yeah, I mean, they just portrayed that in every aspect of their lives, and so it was quite evident.
I agree. What was your best memory? Your best memory. What are your best memories?
To see smiles on the faces of the students and parents, and to realize that in some way I had touched the lives of these children, and I was very thankful for that.
Yeah, teachers make a huge impact on as you all know, on the students and on the community. Do you have any contact with your former students?
I used to see them pretty often in public, in a store or a shopping mall or somewhere. And we would chat for a few minutes or something. But I haven't seen any for a while now.
Yeah.
So I guess people have moved or made changes in their lives, and We just don't see each other as we used to. And I don't get around as much as I used to either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's pretty interesting that you always see on Facebook, they do these surveys, and one of the questions is, can you name your 5th grade teacher? Can you name your kindergarten teacher? And almost everybody can name their teachers, and that just shows what an impact that you all have on us growing up. I can remember my elementary school in Maryland. We were one of the first integrated elementary schools before my time, but we were the first ones. And I didn't think anything was unusual of having African-American kids in my class because they were just classmates. And I think that's because of the success of you all, of that first generation breaking that ground and making it the norm. Like you said, we can't think about today without what you all have done in the forefront of breaking those barriers and making it, for my generation, and I think your generation, the norm, growing up. Do you have any advice for new teachers? I know it's a totally different type of teaching world, but if you get down to the basic level, it's still teaching. Do you have any advice and do you have any advices with your successful career? Do you have any advice for folks just, to go for it? I know you've had such a drive with your life and your sports, and I try to instill that in my kids with their sports, but sometimes it's tough.
Just try and make every effort that you can to stay with it, because it's needed. And I think it's where I don't think it makes any difference how much technology is introduced or how students are exposed to all the technology that we have today. But that person-to-person contact, I think, is important. And so many times, a person or a student will sit in front of a computer or a TV, but it's not the same as that person-to-person contact, where you interact with other individuals. So, hey, hang in here, try it. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're not just a teacher. You're a teacher, you're a social worker, you're a parent on some level. It's a difficult job, and I don't think our teachers get enough credit with what they do.
My sister teaches at the school that's named after my mom.
Oh, that's nice.
That sits on the street that's named after me. And my nieces, Antoinette and Olivia, went to 5th grade there when the school, were kindergartners when the school opened in 2008. So they got to go through the school. My mom obviously was still alive then. And so just to, be in that environment, to drive down the street that's named after me, turn on into
cool.
Fannie W. Fitzgerald Elementary School, and go see my sister and the twins, at the school, in the school building, was I guess the best times of my life.
It's kind of full circle.
Oh gosh, it's just amazing. And my sister still teaches at Fannie W. Fitzgerald, and she's counting the days now till she retires in a little over a year. But having been the sister of a teacher and daughter of 2 educators, and seeing unfortunately as my parents passed, the stream of individuals that came through. I heard that your dad passed. I had to be here. He was my counselor. I was on the phone yesterday with a woman who wants me to speak down in Florida for an event, and she said, your dad was my guidance counselor. And first thing she put in the email, and first thing she said when I got on the phone with her. And I would hear stories, all to remain nameless, of kids and challenges that they had, and how my dad would go above and beyond the call of duty as a guidance counselor to provide, as you said, to be that social worker, to be that parent for that child, and provide, shoes when they didn't have them, or coats when they didn't have them, a ride when they didn't have it. And so, seeing how my sister's experience as a teacher is so markedly different than my parents, and so much more challenging in many ways. Your advice to kind of stick to it is much harder to do today, I think, for teachers. I hear stories every day from my sister, and it's harrowing what she's dealing with kindergartners, guys, you wouldn't believe if I could tell you some of the stories. And so it's a challenge, and we need to do more and provide more support to our teachers. If any way you can do that or advocate for that, that would be great. So.
Yeah, it is tough. I taught for second grade for a year, and just 1 year. That's all I could take it. But it was not to laugh, but some of what you were talking about, some of the challenges that these second graders have, well, it guts you. It breaks your heart, but you see them in their own little ways persevere and move forward, and you see them growing as a student and as a young person, and it's inspiring. But it's hard. It is one of the hardest years that I've had in my career. We really want to go back to museums because it wasn't the children. A lot of times it was the issues that they were trying to deal with, and sometimes the parents were the barrier. And
it's all free.
Yeah. I just have one more question, and then we'll open it up to the crowd for questions. Are you proud of what you accomplished? Are you proud of being one of the Courageous Four?
I am. I feel honored to have been a part of the integration process in Prince William County school system. And it'll be something that I don't think I'll ever forget. I learned from my students and parents, and they learned from me. So it was really quite a rewarding experience. And of course, like any other occupation, there were bumps in the road here and there, but that's with anything. But looking at the picture, trying to envision the whole thing, I'm proud and honored to have been a part of the process. Wonderful.
I'm just happy that you and Mama and others the Courageous Four got that recognition and were able to be alive to see it and enjoy it. And my kids are both seniors. One is a senior in high school, one is a senior in college. My daughter's running track. And it was wonderful. Every Sunday we would leave church for First Mount Zion and Dumfries and go across the street to the community there, Four Seasons, I guess, and my parents had built a home, and we would have Sunday dinner and hang out all day, and so they got to know them really well, thank God, before they passed. And so it was about that time that these stories about the Courageous Four were starting to come about, and so they got to see the school open and be a part of all of that and understand the legacy that they, have.
And be so proud of it.
And so, yes, we're all extremely proud of both my parents, but in particular my mom, for her courage.
Yeah, and it's something that we continue to learn from. Your generation is still teaching us and to break down those barriers, especially in the climate that we're in today. I think we still have a lot to learn from that generation about how to move forward in troubled times. But all right, do we have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned Miss Coleman. Was Miss Braxton the fourth one?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Was Miss Braxton the fourth one? You mentioned Miss Coleman. Who was the fourth?
Mary Porter from Dumfries, Virginia. She taught at all-black Washington Reed Elementary School in the county, and she was assigned to Dumfries Elementary.
I thought maybe Miss Braxton was in that.
She was not in the Courageous Four group. No.
Mrs. Porter's daughter, Gwen Washington, taught for many years as well. She was also my track coach in middle school, and was my gymnastics coach in middle school because I was a gymnast. You saw how tall I am. I'm 5'10". Yeah. Most gymnasts aren't above 5 feet. So to be 10, 12 inches taller than most gymnasts, she was just like, maybe you.
It's not the right sport.
That sounds like what?
Right? Maybe you want to try this over here. Kind of redirected my energy and my talent to something she thought I was better suited to. Thank goodness. So, yeah, it's a small world.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So I have 2 questions. One, you said you started your career at Loch Lomond.
Uh-huh.
Did you do your entire career at Loch Lomond? If not, what other schools did you go to? And the second part, I think you said all 4 of you taught at the same school at one time. Which school?
3 of us.
Okay.
3 of the grade 4 teachers taught at Antioch, Detroit, the Haymarket area at one time. And so we got to know each other really well. And we kept in touch, even after the transfers and the changes that had come about in the county. And did you have something else?
You started your career at Loch Lomond?
Yeah, I did.
Did you do your entire career at Loch Lomond? And if not, what other schools did you go to?
I didn't start my career at Loch Lomond. I started my career at Antioch McCray.
Right.
And then, later transferred to Loch Lomond with the integration part.
Did you stay at Loch Lomond?
I did.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir, you had a question?
I know the original 50s decision, what precise, with specificity year was this going on in the 60s? What,
65, I believe.
65?
65?
What?
The year that you
19.
Year that you-
Went into the schools,
Yeah.
66.
Oh, was
60?
It was 1966.
Okay.
66.
So yeah, that probably makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, about 10 years after.
I got my dates mixed up.
All right.
Yeah,
And
I did too.
I was, the year that the schools then were integrated, I integrated Manassas Park Elementary School. So I was the first and only Black child. And my mother was assigned, she went from Fredland to Manassas Park. So she was the first and only Black teacher that following year. So she integrated the schools for me.
Wow.
Next year I got to go to integrated schools.
That was what year?
66, 67, probably 67. Yeah, 67. I turned 6.
It was the 66, 67 school year, I think. Yeah.
Oh, was it 65, 66?
No, I think it was 66, 67. Yeah, I mix up the years too, but
How long were you the only student at that school?
When they moved you to the white school, who backfilled your place at the school you came from? How did that?
What
You
did
teach in
you?
4th grade and you got moved to the 2nd grade.
I
Who took
did.
your 4th grade class?
That was left up to the principal at Antioch McCray.
Okay, did they have white teachers come in?
No white teachers came to Antioch McCray at that time, no.
That's interesting.
No, it was all black.
Okay.
In the back, yeah.
Can you give me some idea of the size of your school, both of the school itself and your classroom, between the two, the African American schools and the white schools at that time?
The size of your classroom, like the difference in size to you.
Oh, the space
Yeah.
And the
itself?
number
Yeah.
of kids,
The
too.
number of
The classrooms in the white school were larger. It was a bigger school, of course, than the classrooms space-wise in the black schools. And was there something
The number of
else?
kids, the number of students.
Oh, the number of students varied. There may have been, I guess average number of kids, 25, 27. And in some cases where there was an influx or where there had been a turnover or transit area where people had come and gone, more students would come in. And of course, your classes could increase number-wise. So that could be also. And that took place in both schools. Because where I was, the area was transit, and there was a lot of turnover. And some of the classes would end up being so much bigger than others. And there had to be another class formed, or students were transferred into other classrooms that may not have had the number of kids that had the big number.
Okay, ma'am, you had a question? Yeah.
I remember at that time, people were saying, this integration will hurt the black students because they are getting the best teachers now. And after integration, the best teachers will be able to teach at the college level. And so they'll lose their best teachers. Did you see anything like that where teachers were leaving elementary teaching and going into colleges?
I don't know anything about that, really. No, I don't remember being questioned or there was a discussion or whatever concerning that. That's really different for me. I really don't know.
Right.
It was not concerning me. I was not privy to that. So.
Well, you had a master's degree, and I can't remember a single teacher I had at the elementary level that had a master's.
I didn't have a master's. I had done graduate work.
Well, you didn't do graduate work?
Yes, and I had a bachelor's,
Well,
and I had done graduate work, but I hadn't gotten a master's degree.
Yeah, I was speaking about my mom, I think.
Yeah.
You may have recalled.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Talking about my mom had gone to Columbia.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was mentioned that the initial students were sort of hand-selected primarily from military-type families to ease the cultural transition. How long did that process have to continue before people became more comfortable with traditional selection of students?
They did it the next year. They integrated the entire school system the following year. So I'm not sure how, they couldn't possibly handpick all the kids that had a black teacher or all the black kids that had a white teacher. They just couldn't have done that. So I think because schools are still, for the most part, well, not for the most part, are still organized by district and by the area in which you live, there was some areas where there were no, I'm sure, black students in a school or no white students in a school, but over time, as those barriers to where you lived and how you lived and everything else opened up, and, you know, it became more integrated. I will tell you that first grade, I was the only kid in Manassas Park. I went to several different elementary schools because we moved in second grade to Dale City, which was brand new at the time, and my parents built a house there. And so we, upon moving, I think I went to Manassas Park, then I went to Baldwin, which was, I think, my base school. So first year, went with my mom. Second year, she said, okay, you can fly, go to Baldwin. I don't remember, there were more black kids at that school. Can't remember percentage or anything. Third grade, as Anzella was saying, this area was burgeoning and growing, Prince William County at that time, so they tried split shifts, they tried, then they tried this year-round school situation. So by the time I got to third or fourth grade, we were in year-round school. And I went to Neabsco, but it wasn't finished yet, so I think I went to Bel Air as a split shifts or something. And then, so by then, by third grade or fourth grade, it was fully integrated. So from my first grade being the one and only to third grade, it was completely, and I had, of course,
Totally different.
Dale City, which was brand new. So there were black families moving in and white families moving in, and nobody was paying. You know, I lived in a cul-de-sac with all kinds of different kids, and never really thought about integration, honestly, ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
They pick the kids to go into the classes the first year. And I'm sure they pick the 4 principals to be supportive of the teachers coming in.
Yeah.
But there must have been some white teachers who were not comfortable with this process. Did any of them leave?
Well, not to my knowledge. Now, I don't rule out that there may have been opposition or feelings of hostility at that particular time. I don't rule that out at all. I was not confronted with it. So I can't give you or cite examples where somebody was rude to me or made a negative comment to me or about me or whatever at that time.
So in lunches in the teacher's lounge and things like that, everybody was socially fair?
Yeah, as far as I remember, I didn't hang out a lot in there anyway.
Yeah, I always ate lunch in my
My
classroom.
mom never mentioned any kind of
No.
resistance or hostilities or anything. Never one time. And again, back in the day, gosh, how many times a day did you face something, or weak or something, when somebody might say something untoward or something.
Yeah.
So it may have just, if they did or said, it may have just roll off their backs. I just.
And I'm sure, or I shouldn't say I'm sure, but perhaps there were meetings of groups that had discussions about the black teachers being in the schools and what was going on with that and, the gossip type stuff and all that. It could have been very well. I don't rule that out. Because it probably were things said about me that I wasn't faced with or confronted with. I don't rule it out. That's human nature.
So 10 years go on between Brown versus Board of Education and Prince William County taking an action. What prompted that initial action from the county? 10 years have gone by, why now?
Yeah, against the law. The Supreme Court had made a ruling, and I think there was a law that school systems should be integrated. And there were systems that held out as long as they could, or maybe until they felt threatened or whatever. And
They always have the threat of pulling federal
funding.
Right. And
So, you can do what you want, but this $100,000 or this $500,000
That's right.
school system is no longer coming.
I think my county, Spotsylvania, was one of the last ones.
yeah.
Demonstration,
And
65 and 66.
Yeah, that's 1964 is when the Voting Rights Act
This
passed.
is civil rights demonstration.
Yeah,
So everybody seemingly thinks we need to get on board.
yeah.
And I'm just going to make a comment. I think that you mentioned Bevel or Saunders. I think those must have been, I'm not a teacher, but I've lived in this county 48 years. And I believe we have schools named for Bevel and Saunders.
We do.
Which tells me that they were leading educators at the time.
Yes.
And they were really smart people who were trying to figure things out. And therefore, we do not name school for peers and others with appropriate things if you're an educator. That's what that tells me. Bevel and Saunders were at the pinnacle of things, trying to move on. That's what I hear.
Yeah. And again, they saw what was happening through this massive resistance of schools. Dan was just saying that he went to a school where, or Spotsylvania County, where there was one of the last holdouts. So it just was untenable. There's just no way that, life could continue the way it was, where kids weren't going to school because you don't want to integrate. And you imagine you saw Ruby Bridges, that's her name? Kansas, St. Louis?
I think it's St. Louis.
St. Louis. The 4 girls that went in and got murdered when they were just trying to go to school. So, I mean, you have to, again, put it in the context of all the other bad things that were happening around school integration. I don't think there was ever busing in Prince William County, was there?
There was what?
Was there busing in Prince William County where they actually bused black kids to the white schools and white kids to the black schools? I don't recall that happening. It did certainly. Again, I began school right when integration started, and there was no ever thought of us, moving me out of Manassas to someplace else. My mom did it. She bused me out of my base school to her school. But there weren't that system didn't exist here. Where in many large cities it was, and that was also another huge bone of contention for families, saying, why is my kid on the bus for an hour when there's a school next door?
All right. All right.
And just how do we keep this memory alive? Because it's so important to not forget where we've been and that journey it took, the courage it took to bring this integration to fruition. How do we keep these memories alive, in your opinion?
I think holding a forum like this helps keep the memory alive and inspires us, as I mentioned, to move forward with this generation. The county's recognizing this movement, and especially the 4 of you. Like I said, we're planning an exhibit and some research to be done, and we're gathering interviews. So I think there's momentum, especially in today's environment. I think we're gathering momentum to remember this, so we don't go back, that we keep moving forward, we keep progressing. So I think there's lots of different ways that we can do that. And just taking inspiration from you and being the best people we can be, and to make sure that this doesn't happen again and that we don't move backwards, that we continue to move forwards.
And then also the Historical Commission has a marker that will be present. We're just waiting for it to be delivered, and then we put it at the school.
Okay, yeah. So the county's moving forward, yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, are there any other questions? Yes.
I have a question that's related to what you've been talking about. As far as public library service prior to official integration, can you give us your experience for what library facilities you had available to you?
It was pretty poor.
Well, at Antioch Crate, there was no library. There was a bookmobile. And the bookmobile was like a big van or whatever. And it would come around to the schools. And children were allowed to go in there and, look and see if there was a book that they would like to take out. And they would return it to the bookmobile when it came back around. So that's what was going on in the black school. We didn't have a library. Now, there was one at the white school, a library, a nice one. Mm-hmm.
At that time, there was only one public library building in the county in Manassas. Did you feel comfortable visiting it or using its services?
Betty Miles was librarian.
It was okay. I was curious, and I thought I would like visiting the library for different reasons. And as time went on, things got better, and I felt more comfortable, and I would go more often. So it just progressed from one level to the other.
But you were not refused service there?
No, I don't recall that, no.
This, one of these little buildings over here was the public library. And there were two librarians. I remember Betty Miles was one, and I can't remember the name of the other lady. But it was a pretty pathetic library.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us this morning. It's been wonderful. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you all have enjoyed it. We'll take a break in between this and the next session. Thank you all very, very much. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.